The training hall smelled like overconfidence and disinfectant. I had been teaching combat classes at the Galactic Defense Academy for 12 cycles, and in all that time, I had never seen such a ridiculous display of arrogance. 12 of our finest Vrexian cadets, each standing between 7 and 8 feet tall, muscles rippling under their scaled hides, were literally flexing at each other while they waited. And what were they waiting for? A human. A single, solitary human female, who barely reached 6 feet in height. Instructor Callus, one of my teaching assistants, whispered, his secondary mandibles clicking with nervous energy. "Are you certain about this demonstration?" I adjusted my datapad and tried not to laugh. "Vesh, my friend, I am absolutely certain this will be educational, though perhaps not in the way our cadets expect." The human's name was Officer Riley Marchenko, on loan from Earth's military for a cultural exchange program that I had initially thought was a complete waste of resources. Humans had only joined the Galactic Council 3 standard years ago, and most species still viewed them as the galaxy's newest joke. Soft skin, no natural weapons, average strength at best, and they died if you looked at them wrong. Or so everyone assumed. I had made that assumption too. Right up until I witnessed Riley take down a Korthax berserker during a station riot using nothing but a meal tray and what she called pure spite. The doors to the training hall hissed open, and Riley walked in wearing standard academy fatigues, her dark hair pulled back in a tight braid, expression completely neutral. She was carrying a non-lethal stun baton, the kind we gave to security personnel for crowd control, the kind that delivered a mild electric shock, just enough to make someone reconsider their life choices. The Vrexian cadets burst into laughter. "That is the great human warrior?" bellowed Kronak, the largest of the group, his voice echoing off the reinforced walls. "I have seen hatchlings more intimidating." Riley's expression did not change. She simply walked to the center of the mat, rolled her shoulders once, twice, and then looked directly at me. "Instructor Callus, are we ready to begin this circus?" Oh, I liked her immediately. "Cadets!" I called out, and the laughter died down to scattered chuckles. "Officer Marchenko has graciously agreed to participate in today's exercise. Hand-to-hand combat, non-lethal engagement. The objective is simple: restrain the opponent. Who would like to volunteer first?" Every single hand shot up. Of course they did. The opportunity to humiliate a human in front of their peers? That was too good to pass up. "Excellent," I said, making a show of consulting my datapad. "How about all 12 of you at once?" The silence that followed was beautiful. Vesh made a strangled sound beside me. "Instructor, that is hardly fair to—" "To the cadets? I agree, but they insisted." I looked at Riley, who had the audacity to wink at me. "Officer Marchenko, are you comfortable with these odds?" She cracked her knuckles, and the sound echoed like gunshots in the quiet hall. "Instructor, I grew up with 4 older brothers in Detroit. 12 against 1? That is what we call a Tuesday." Kronak stepped forward, his crest flaring with indignation. "You mock us, human. We are trained warriors, descendants of—" Yeah, apex predators, proud heritage, blah, blah, blah," Riley interrupted, twirling the stun baton casually. "I have heard the speech. You going to talk me to death, or are we doing this?" I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. The Vrexian cadets looked like they were about to have a collective aneurysm. Their honor had been questioned, their pride insulted. This soft, tiny alien had just dismissed their entire genetic lineage with a bored hand wave. "Begin!" I called out, and chaos erupted. Well, it tried to erupt. It more accurately got interrupted, redirected, and systematically dismantled. Kronak charged first, naturally, because he had all the tactical awareness of a concussed rock. He came in fast, arms outstretched for a grapple, that would have crushed most beings into paste. Riley waited until he was 3 feet away, then dropped low and swept his leading leg with the baton. The electricity fired on impact, and suddenly Cronak's muscular leg decided it did not want to support his considerable weight anymore. He went down like a falling monument, and Riley was already moving. 2 more cadets rushed her from opposite sides, thinking they could pin her between them. Basic pincer movement. Textbook stuff. Riley saw them coming, grabbed Cronak's fallen arm, and with a grunt of effort that suggested she was actually trying now, used his body as a lever to vault herself up and over. The 2 cadets collided with each other instead, and the crunch of armor meeting armor at high speed made me wince. Riley landed in a crouch, Baton already sweeping out to tag both fallen cadets across their exposed necks. 2 more bursts of electricity, 2 more bodies losing coordination. 15 seconds. 3 down. The remaining 9 cadets finally started taking this seriously. They spread out, approaching from multiple angles, weapons ready. They were using proper formation now, communicating with hand signals. This was more like it. Riley stood in the center, breathing slightly faster but still looking remarkably calm. She was tracking all of them, head moving in small, precise increments, calculating, planning. "Surround her!" one of the cadets hissed. "She cannot fight all of us." Riley smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "Want to bet your dignity on that, Scales?" They rushed her as a coordinated unit, and for about 2 seconds, it looked like they might actually have a chance. Then Riley did something I had never seen in all my years of combat instruction. She went up, not jumped, not leaped, but ran at the nearest cadet and used his bent knee as a stepping stone, launching herself into a spinning flip that carried her over the entire group. While in mid-air, she tagged 2 cadets on their helmets with the baton, and the electrical discharge made their head protection conduct the shock straight through. They dropped, twitching. She landed on the far side and immediately rolled forward as 3 sets of claws slashed through the space where she had been. The roll brought her between 2 cadets' legs, and she jabbed upward with the baton twice. 2 more down, howling and clutching their electrified thighs. 25 seconds. 7 down. "She is too fast," someone shouted, which was adorable. Vrexians were faster than humans in a straight sprint. But speed was not the same thing as agility, and watching Riley move was like watching water flow around rocks. She was not fighting against their strength. She was simply not being where their strength was aimed. A cadet tried to grab her from behind, and she dropped her weight suddenly, slipping out of his grip like oiled silk. As he stumbled forward off balance, she swept his legs, then jabbed the baton into his lower back as he fell. 8 down. 2 cadets tried the pincer movement again, having apparently learned nothing from watching their classmates. Riley waited until they were committed to their charge, then dove forward into a shoulder roll that took her between them. As she rolled, she extended the baton to both sides. It caught both cadets in the ankles, and the electricity made their legs fold in ways legs were not meant to fold. 10 down. 35 seconds total. The last 2 cadets standing were backing away now, their earlier bravado completely evaporated. One of them was Drex, who I knew for a fact had won 3 regional combat tournaments. He was staring at Riley like she was some kind of mythical creature. "How?" he asked simply. Riley stood up slowly, baton resting on her shoulder. She was breathing harder now, a light sheen of sweat on her forehead, but she looked more energized than tired. "You want the real answer, or the answer that will make you feel better?" "Real," Drex said, to his credit. "You all fight like you have never lost before," Riley said, her voice matter of fact. "You rely on size, strength, natural advantages. You fight expecting to win because you always have. Me? I am a human. We evolved as endurance hunters on a death world where everything wanted to eat us. We learned to fight by losing over and over until we figured out how to win anyway. You fight with confidence. I fight with spite and pattern recognition. She pointed the baton at them casually. Also, you telegraphed every single move. Your eyes track where you are going to strike. Your weight shifts before you charge. Your breathing changes before you lunge. You might as well have sent me a written invitation to dodge. I could not help myself. I started clapping, slow and deliberate. Outstanding analysis, Officer Marchenko. Cadets, you have just learned a valuable lesson. Superior physicality means nothing if your opponent can predict your every move. Drex and his companion looked at each other, then at Riley, then at their 10 groaning classmates scattered across the mat. Finally, Drex lowered his weapon and inclined his head in a gesture of respect. We yield, human. Well fought. Nope, Riley said cheerfully. Exercise is not over until all 12 are down. Sorry, guys, but Instructor Callis paid me an earth coffee for this, and I am completing the job. She moved before they could react, closing the distance in 3 long strides. Drex tried to bring his training baton up to block, but Riley slid under his guard and jabbed him in the solar plexus. The electricity discharged, and Drex made a sound like a punctured hover tire before collapsing. The last cadet tried to run, actually turned and tried to flee the mat. Riley threw the baton. It spun end over end through the air and caught him right between the shoulder blades. He went down face first, and the sound of his helmet hitting the mat echoed through the suddenly quiet hall. 42 seconds total. Riley walked over, retrieved her baton, and turned to face me with a slight bow. 12 Predator cadets neutralized, Instructor. As requested. The training hall erupted into noise. Not laughter this time, but excited chatter, disbelief, demands to review the security footage. My teaching assistants were frantically taking notes. Several cadets from other classes had apparently heard the commotion and were crowding the observation windows. And on the mat, 12 of our finest warriors were slowly picking themselves up, looking at the human in their midst with entirely new expressions. Not contempt, not amusement, respect, and maybe just a little bit of fear. I walked onto the mat, making sure my voice carried to every corner of the hall. Let this be a lesson to all of you. The Galactic Council includes species of every size, strength, and capability. The humans may seem weak by our standards, but they compensated for their lack of natural weapons by developing the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. I paused for effect. Their minds. Riley snorted. That. And we are really good at holding grudges. You would not believe how long we can stay mad about something. We once had a war that started because someone threw someone else out a window. Vesh leaned over. Is she serious? Completely, I confirmed. I looked it up. Multiple wars, actually. Defenestration is apparently a major trigger for human conflict. Define what now? Throwing people out windows. They have a specific word for it. That should tell you everything you need to know about human history. On the mat, Kronak had managed to get to his feet, still looking dazed. He approached Riley slowly, his crest lowered in a gesture of submission. Officer Marchenko, I apologize for my earlier words. I have no words. That was magnificent. Riley grinned and extended her hand for what I had learned was a human gesture of respect. Kronak stared at it for a moment, then carefully grasped it. Riley pumped his arm up and down twice, in what she called a handshake. No hard feelings, big guy, she said. You all did pretty well for a first attempt. Want to know the really funny part? What? Kronak asked, sounding like he was afraid of the answer. Riley's grin got wider. I was going easy on you. That baton is set to training mode, lowest charge possible. In a real fight, with real equipment? She shrugged. Different story entirely. The color drained from Kronak's face, which was impressive given that Vrexian blood was purple. I decided to end the class before anyone had an existential crisis. Excellent work, everyone. Cadets, you will spend the next hour analyzing the footage and writing a tactical report on what went wrong and how you could have adapted. Officer Marchenko, thank you for your demonstration. My pleasure, Instructor, Riley said, handing me back the baton. Same time next week? Absolutely, though I might increase the number of cadets. 12 seems too easy for you. She laughed, and the sound was genuine and warm. Instructor Callis, you keep bringing them. I will keep dropping them. Fair warning, though, if you go past 20, I am going to need hazard pay. As she walked toward the exit, every single cadet in the room tracked her movement. Some with admiration, some with calculation, trying to figure out how she had moved so fast. A few looked like they were re-evaluating their entire career choice. Vesh appeared at my elbow again. Instructor, that was... I do not even know what that was. That, Vesh, was a human being mildly annoyed, I said. Imagine what they are like when they are actually angry. I would prefer not to. Wise choice. The training hall slowly emptied as cadets helped their groaning classmates to the medical bay for treatment. Nothing serious, just bruised pride and some residual muscle spasms from the electrical shocks. They would recover physically in a few hours. Their egos might take a bit longer. I was reviewing the footage on my data pad when I noticed something interesting. In the 42 seconds of actual combat, Riley had not wasted a single movement. Every step, every dodge, every strike had served multiple purposes. When she rolled between those two cadets, she had not just avoided their attack. She had positioned them to collide with each other, taken their legs out, and moved herself to a more advantageous position, all in one fluid motion. It was like watching a master craftsman at work. Beautiful, efficient, and utterly ruthless. A notification flashed on my pad. Message from the Academy Director. Callis, what in the 17 hells happened in Training Hall 5? Medical Bay is reporting 12 Vrexian cadets with electrical burns and shattered egos. Please explain. I typed back quickly. Successful cultural exchange demonstration. Human officer provided valuable combat instruction. Cadets learned humility. Will submit full report. A pause then. Did the human injure any of our students? Only their pride, Director. Only their pride. Another pause, longer this time. Then, good. Pride is replaceable. Competent warriors are not. Schedule more sessions. If humans can do that with a non-lethal baton, I want our cadets trained to fight like them, not just against them. I smiled and closed the message. Change was coming to the Academy, whether the old guard liked it or not. The humans had been underestimated for too long, dismissed as weak because they lacked claws and scales, and the natural advantages so many other species took for granted. But as Riley had just demonstrated, sometimes the most dangerous predator was not the one with the biggest teeth. It was the one who had learned to survive without them. 3 days after the incident, as it was now being called around the Academy, I found Riley in the observation deck nursing what she claimed was coffee, but smelled like industrial solvent mixed with regret. You have become quite popular, I said, settling into the seat across from her. Half the Academy wants to train with you. The other half wants to avoid you entirely. Riley took a long sip of her toxic beverage and grimaced. Yeah, well, fame is exhausting. I have had 17 different cadets ask me to teach them earth fighting techniques, like we have some secret mystical art. I kept telling them it is just physics and paying attention, but nobody believes me. To be fair, what you did was rather extraordinary. Callis, it really was not. She set down her cup and leaned back. Look, I grew up in a rough neighborhood. My brothers used to practice their wrestling moves on me. I joined the military at 18 and spent 6 years getting my butt kicked by people who knew what they were doing. Every move I used in that hall, I learned it by having it used on me first, usually painfully. I clicked my mandibles thoughtfully. So humans learn combat through repeated failure? We learn everything through repeated failure. It is kind of our thing. She gestured out the viewport at the stars beyond. How do you think we got out here? We strapped ourselves to controlled explosions and hoped for the best. Failed a bunch, learned from it, tried again. Same principle applies to fighting. Before I could respond, Vesh burst onto the observation deck, his translator working overtime to keep up with his excited chittering. Instructor, director, problem, big problem. I stood immediately. Vesh, breathe. What happened? Challenge issued. Formal combat challenge. The Krev delegation. My stomach, all three of them, dropped simultaneously. The Krev? They challenged one of our cadets? Worse. Vesh's antennae were practically vibrating. They challenged Officer Marchenko. Public demonstration. Full contact. Tomorrow at midday cycle. Riley, who had been calmly drinking her terrible coffee, choked slightly. I am sorry. What now? I turned to her, trying to keep my voice steady. The Krev are a warrior species, very proud, very traditional, and very angry that you humiliated cadets in front of witnesses. They see it as an insult to warrior culture across the galaxy. So they want to fight me? Seriously? Riley looked more confused than concerned. Over a training exercise? The Krev take combat very seriously, I explained. They view your victory as a statistical anomaly that must be corrected. Their champion, Thraka the Unyielding, has challenged you to single combat to restore honor. Thraka the Unyielding, Riley repeated slowly. Let me guess. Big guy? Lots of spikes? Attitude problem? 8.5 feet tall, 400 pounds of muscle and bone plates, undefeated in 73 formal challenges, Vesh supplied helpfully. Also, yes, significant attitude problem. Riley was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee like it might contain answers. Then she looked up at me with an expression I could not quite read. Can I refuse? You can, I said carefully, but it would be seen as cowardice. The Krev would claim humans are only brave when fighting weaker opponents. It would damage Earth's standing in the Council. Of course it would. Riley drained her cup and stood. Fine. Tell Thraka the Unyielding that Riley the Annoyed accepts his challenge. Same rules as the cadet demonstration. Non-lethal engagement. Vesh made a sound like grinding gears. Actually, the Krev requested full contact. Traditional rules. First blood or submission. First blood, Riley said flatly. They want actual blood. It is ceremonial, I assured her quickly. Just enough to mark the skin. The fight ends immediately once drawn. Very controlled, very regulated. Riley laughed, but it was not her usual warm sound. This was darker, edged with something that made my scales itch. Callous, my friend. Nothing about this is going to be controlled. But sure, let us give the people a show. The next day, the main arena was packed beyond capacity. Word had spread fast, and apparently everyone in the sector wanted to watch either a human get destroyed or somehow pull off another miracle. The betting pools were running hot, with odds heavily favoring Thraka. I stood in Riley's preparation room, watching her go through stretches that looked painful even by human standards. She was wearing light combat armor, minimal plating that would not restrict movement. Smart choice against a heavy hitter like Thraka. You do not have to do this, I said for the third time. Yeah, I really do, Riley replied, touching her toes without bending her knees, which should have been anatomically impossible. If I back out now, every diplomatic meeting Earth has for the next decade will start with, Remember when your officer was too scared to fight. Politics is stupid, but I get it. Do you have a strategy? She straightened up and rolled her neck until it made several disturbing popping sounds. Same as always. Do not get hit. Hit back harder. Find the weakness. Every fighter has one, no matter how tough they look. Thraka has been fighting for 20 years. He might not have an obvious weakness. Everyone has a weakness, Callus. Size, overconfidence, predictable patterns, old injuries they compensate for. I just need to last long enough to find his. She grinned suddenly. Besides, I have a secret weapon. What is that? Absolute spite. You would be amazed what humans can accomplish when we are really, really annoyed. The arena doors opened, and the roar of the crowd washed over us like a physical force. Thousands of beings from dozens of species, all here to watch violence, masquerading as honor. Riley took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked out into the light. I followed her to the edge of the combat circle, a 50-foot diameter ring marked with traditional Krev symbols. Across the arena, Thraka emerged from his preparation chamber, and the crowd went absolutely wild. He was massive. Even by Krev standards, he was huge, all slabs of muscle covered in thick bone plates that acted as natural armor. His forearms each held a different traditional weapon: mace, blade, chain, and what looked like a combination of both a hammer and a bad decision. His head was crowned with horn ridges, and his eyes glowed an unsettling orange. He looked like something evolution designed specifically to end fights quickly and violently. Riley looked like she was having serious second thoughts. The arena master, a dignified Peluvian elder, floated to the center of the ring. Beings of the Galactic Council, we gather today to witness a challenge of honor. Thraka of Krev Prime versus Riley Marchenko of Earth. Traditional combat rules apply. First blood or submission ends the match. Combatants, do you understand the terms? I understand, Thraka rumbled, his voice like an avalanche with anger issues. Crystal clear, Riley called out, though I noticed her hands were clenched tight. Then, take your positions. Riley walked to her mark, and I noticed something interesting. She was not watching Thraka's weapons or his obvious strengths. She was watching his feet, the way he distributed his weight, how his secondary arms hung slightly lower than his primary set. The analysis had already begun. Begin! The arena master declared, and immediately vacated the ring at impressive speed. Thraka charged immediately, because of course he did. Subtlety was not really the Krev way. His primary arms swung the mace and blade in a devastating cross pattern that would have pulverized anything caught between them. Riley dropped flat to the ground, and both weapons passed through empty air above her. Before Thraka could recover, she kicked out hard at his leading ankle. Not his knee, not his shin, but specifically his ankle, where the bone plates had a natural gap. Thraka stumbled, just slightly, but it was enough. Riley rolled away and came up in a defensive stance 15 feet from him. "You fight like a coward!" Thraka bellowed. "Stand and face me with honor!" "Honor does not pay my bills, big guy," Riley shot back. "Come make me stand still." Thraka roared and charged again, this time leading with the chain weapon in his tertiary arm. He swung it in a wide arc, trying to catch Riley no matter which direction she dodged. She went up instead of sideways, jumping higher than any human had a right to jump, and the chain passed underneath her. While airborne, she grabbed the chain itself and used her momentum to swing around it, changing direction mid-air like gravity was merely a suggestion. She landed behind Thraka and immediately drove her elbow into the back of his knee, again targeting a gap in his natural armor. Thraka went down on one knee, and the crowd gasped. Their undefeated champion, kneeling before a human, a third his size. But Thraka was not done. He spun with shocking speed for something so large, and his hammer arm came around in a backswing that caught Riley across her midsection. The impact sent her flying across the ring, and she hit the ground hard, rolling several times before coming to a stop. The crowd went silent. Riley did not get up immediately. She stayed down, gasping, and I felt my heart seize with worry. That hit would have killed most species outright. "Human!" Thraka called out, standing to his full height. "You fought well, but this ends now. Yield and retain your honor." Riley pushed herself up to her hands and knees, still gasping. Blood was trickling from her lip where she had bitten it on impact. First blood. The match should be over. But the arena master did not call it, because the rules stated that blood drawn by self-injury did not count. It had to be drawn by the opponent's deliberate action. Riley looked up at Thraka, wiped the blood from her mouth, and smiled. It was the most terrifying expression I had ever seen on a human face. "Okay," she said, her voice rough. "Now I am actually mad." She stood, slower than before, clearly favoring her left side where the hammer had connected. But she stood, and she raised her fists again. Thraka hesitated. For just a moment, confusion crossed his features. He had hit her with enough force to end most fights. She should be done, should be broken. But humans, as I was learning, did not break the way other species expected. "Your species is insane," Thraka said, almost conversational. "Yeah, we get that a lot," Riley agreed. "Come on, champ. Round 2. This time, when Thraka charged, Riley did not dodge. She ran straight at him, which was either brilliant or suicidal, possibly both. At the last second, she slid between his legs, her smaller size finally becoming an advantage. As she passed underneath him, she reached up and grabbed his chain weapon, yanking it hard. The chain wrapped around Thraka's own legs, and his momentum carried him forward into a catastrophic tumble. 400 pounds of angry Krev warrior hit the ground face first with enough force to crack the arena floor. Riley was already moving. She jumped onto Thraka's back, grabbed one of his horn ridges with both hands, and pulled his head back sharply. With her other hand, she made a blade with her fingers and struck precisely at a pressure point on his thick neck. Thraka's eyes went wide. His arms spasmed. His breathing hitched. "Carotid artery!" Riley hissed into his ear, just loud enough for the arena microphones to pick up. "Every species with a brain needs blood flow to it. You have got about 10 seconds before you pass out. Tap out or nap out. Your choice." For a long moment, nothing happened. The crowd held its collective breath. Thraka's hands clenched and unclenched, weapons clattering to the ground. Then, slowly, deliberately, he tapped his primary hand against the arena floor 3 times. The submission signal. The arena exploded into chaos. Half the crowd was cheering, the other half was demanding recounts, instant replays, accusations of trickery. But the arena master's voice cut through it all. "Submission registered. Victory to Riley Marchenko of Earth." Riley released Thraka and rolled off his back, moving away quickly in case he changed his mind. But Thraka just lay there for a moment, breathing heavily, then slowly pushed himself up to a sitting position. He looked at Riley with an expression I could not decipher. Then, incredibly, he started laughing. Deep, booming laughter that echoed through the arena. "Impossible!" he declared, still laughing. "Absolutely impossible. A human, defeated by a human." He stood, wobbling slightly, and extended his primary hand to Riley. "You fight with no honor, no tradition, no rules. It is magnificent. I must learn this." Riley, clearly still in pain from that hammer strike, nevertheless took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. "No honor? I won, did I not?" "You won by being unpredictable, targeting weaknesses, using my own strength against me." Thraka's eyes gleamed. "This is not how warriors fight. This is how survivors fight. There is a difference, and I have been too proud to see it." He turned to address the crowd, his voice carrying to every corner. "Let it be known, Thraka the Unyielding has learned humility. The humans, these small, soft creatures, they are not warriors in our tradition. They are something else, something perhaps more dangerous. They are survivors who refuse to quit." The crowd's reaction was mixed, but I noticed something interesting. The younger members of various species were cheering wildly. The older, more traditional members looked scandalized. Change was happening right before our eyes, whether everyone was ready for it or not. Riley limped over to where I stood at the ring's edge. "Callus, I need medical attention. A very long bath and about 15 hours of sleep. In that order." "You need a celebration," I corrected. "You just defeated the Krev champion. Do you understand what this means? That I am going to be sore for a week? That humans can no longer be dismissed. You have proven, twice now, that size and strength mean nothing against strategy and determination." She smiled tiredly. "Good. Can I get my celebration after the medical attention and sleep?" "Absolutely." As we left the arena, Thraka fell into step beside us, his weapons holstered. "Officer Marchenko, you must teach me your techniques. I have fought for 20 years and learned nothing. You have shown me I have been fighting wrong this entire time." "I did not fight wrong," Riley corrected gently. "You fought perfectly for traditional combat. But I was not being traditional. I was being practical." "Then teach me practical," Thraka insisted. "I wish to learn this human way of fighting." Riley looked at me, exhausted and battered but grinning. "Callus, I think we are going to need a bigger training hall." Over the following weeks, something remarkable happened. Riley's training sessions became the most popular classes at the academy. Cadets from every species showed up, eager to learn what they were calling the human method. Though Riley kept insisting it was just common sense and pattern recognition. Thraka became her most dedicated student, and watching an 8-foot Krev warrior carefully practicing pressure points and joint manipulation was both hilarious and oddly touching. He had gone from undefeated champion to humble student practically overnight. I was in my office reviewing the latest training reports when Riley knocked and entered, moving much easier now that her ribs had healed. "You wanted to see me, instructor?" "I did. I have news from the Galactic Council." I gestured to a seat, and she took it. "They are impressed with the cultural exchange results. Very impressed. They want to expand the program, bring more human instructors to other academies across Council space." Riley's eyebrows rose. "That is fantastic. Earth is going to be thrilled." "There is more. They want you specifically to head the program, design curriculum, select instructors, establish standards." I paused. "It is a significant promotion and responsibility." She was quiet for a moment, processing. "That is a huge opportunity. But I have to ask, why me? I just showed up, beat up some cadets, got beat up myself, and apparently started a revolution in combat training." "Exactly," I said. "You did not come here trying to prove humanity was superior. You simply showed what was possible when you stopped relying on advantages and started using your brain. That is a lesson every species needs." Riley leaned back, thinking. "If I do this, I have some conditions." "Name them." "First, the training has to be voluntary. I am not forcing anyone to learn." "Agreed." "Second, it stops being called the human method. It is just practical combat. Any species can learn it." "Reasonable." "Third," she grinned, "you have to be my second in command. I need someone who understands both the traditional way and what we are trying to build." I felt my mandibles click with surprise and pleasure. "I would be honored." Riley stood and extended her hand. I took it, and we shook in the human manner. sealing the agreement. As she turned to leave, I called out one more time. "Riley, do you ever regret accepting that first challenge? The one with the cadets?" She paused at the door and looked back. "Callous, I grew up fighting just to prove I belonged somewhere. Then I joined the military and fought for my country. Now I get to fight to show that everyone, regardless of size or strength, has value if they are smart and determined enough." She smiled. "No regrets. This is exactly where I am supposed to be." After she left, I pulled up the footage from that first training session one more time, watched Riley drop 12 cadets in 42 seconds with nothing but a non-lethal baton and absolute confidence. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, had seen them as weak, fragile, unremarkable. But what the galaxy had failed to understand was that humans did not need to be the strongest or the fastest or the most naturally gifted. They just needed to be stubborn enough to keep getting back up, smart enough to learn from every fall, and creative enough to turn their weaknesses into weapons. And that, I realized, made them the most dangerous species of all. Not because they could not be beaten, but because they absolutely refused to stay down.